Hello everyone, how are you guys doing? Today I'm going to be talking to you while you are resting at the comfort of your home because of this enforced environmental situation which is forcing you to sit at home and you are trying to figure out what to do. While this is happening because of the situation, we have to be mindful about the slowly creeping in sedentary behavior that can set into us, which is actually also termed as physical inactivity, or in other words, sedentary time, increasing sedentary time. There are many adverse metabolic effects for increasing your sedentary time. And so let's talk first about the physical activity, and also then we can talk about the physical inactivity and the various metabolic effects that we face. So the physical activity is any activity throughout the day that is not done during your sleeping time, that is done during your not done during sleeping time, as well as during your eating time. So any activity, any movement that is done out of your exercise time. So what is really the exercise time? Exercise time is only a very small planned defined activity for half an hour or 1 hour or a little bit longer. And so what about all the activity that is done after the exercise time? This is the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or the energy that we liberate with activities throughout the day. However, the sedentary time is not calculated into this. This is the physically inactive time that we are mostly sitting around. So if we think about the energy expenditure in metabolic medicine, just sitting around is one metabolic equivalent. If you stand up, you almost double up your energy expenditure and you become two metabolic equivalents. That means it's double the time, double the energy that you spend than when you are sitting, just sitting around. And then when you start walking with light activity, it becomes three metabolic equivalents. And then when you start moving vigorously and then running, then it goes to 6 and goes like that. So trying to minimize our sedentary time and trying to increase with light activity, at least with the various variable movements, and minimizing the sedentary time would be very helpful especially at around this time, especially when the society is shut down outside. We don't have to shut down our physical activity and metabolic activity while we are at home. Now I am going to actually take you and have a closer look at the various illustrations and studies that were done to show you the benefits of physical activity and also the detrimental effects of prolonged sedentary time or physical inactivity.
So let's talk about the first slide. In this slide, which actually looks like a square box with red and a transitioning yellow and green, you can see that this is actually a study from a meta-analysis of over 1 million people, and it actually shows a strong positive relationship between sitting time and moderate to vigorous physical activity, and also all-cause mortality. On the x-axis, you see the moderate to vigorous activity, and on the y-axis, you see the daily sitting time. So the person that's sitting around all day is actually represented by the top left corner in the red. And again, this person who is sitting there with the greatest amount of time spent in sitting at the top left red, he is at a high risk of all-cause mortality, and as this risk actually decreases as even with small addition to activity as we bring him down to like standing. So mostly the red in this boxes here is bad and the green is good. And when you see the greatest volumes of physical activity that you see on the right hand corner below is the green, where even moderate physical activity will actually decrease the risk of a person with all-cause mortality. This is pretty self-explanatory. So you can also see in the slide that the increased cardiovascular mortality, cardiovascular disease, which is hypertension, diabetes, increased association and risk of colon, endometrial, and lung cancers are associated with the increased sedentary time that you notice on this slide.
So on the second slide here, you see that this is actually a study of a large data set. They studied about 2,500 adults, 60 plus year olds, and followed them for 12 years and looked at their mortality. The population in this graph is actually divided into quintiles. You see those boxes, and they were separated. Basically, all these quintiles are separated based on their physical fitness. And you can see on the left, on the y-axis, that the mortality and fitness are shown, and on the x-axis you see their cardiorespiratory fitness. What you see in this slide is the largest and the tallest black box that you see on the left hand side is the first quintile, and the least fit people are represented by this. These are the most sedentary, and they had the highest hazard ratio in terms of their health risk for all-cause mortality due to lack of activity. The second important finding that we see in this is they have made the people who have been even slightly active from being sedentary had made the biggest jump coming to the second quintile, and they had the largest reduction in mortality. So the interesting finding is moving from low activity to even slight or moderate activity gives us the biggest return for our investment in terms of metabolic benefit as well as other health benefits. On this third slide, this is a very interesting study. The study was done by a famous researcher and father of physical activity epidemiology. His name is Jeremy Morris. He is from United Kingdom. He died at the age of 100 years. This is actually a landmark study in that was done in the 1950s. In this study, he compared the conductors and the drivers in a double-decker bus in UK. The drivers, actually, we know that they sit all day, and the conductors are moving up and down and collecting money. Well, this is not the case now. Most of the buses are automated and there are no more conductors, but this is an old study done in 1950. So what did they find in this study? When you look at the slide, which I'm going to put as a fourth slide, you could see that the relative incidence of heart attacks, which is myocardial infarction that says on the slide, has actually, you see that it's actually more in the drivers than in the conductors. So the conclusion was increase in the physical activity was protective from heart attacks, and so the physical activity was good, which is pretty clear. This is actually a very good, plausible and reasonable explanation. On the other hand, regardless of the physical activity, equally plausible and reasonable explanation is excessive sitting of the driver increased the risk. So it is not just about the protection of the physical activity, but the consequence of increased sedentary behavior. It is actually a different lens to look at. If you are not physically active and sit a lot, your risk increases. In the last slide here, I have specific suggestions for staying non-sedentary, like standing up at the meetings, walking meetings, walk and talk, answering phone while standing, not doing long distance journeys too long, and minimizing it to a maximum time of 60 minutes and taking breaks. Never use the closest washroom. Also, remote control free days, taking breaks for TV commercials in between while you're watching TV, and similarly any opportunity to introduce incidental movement.
So the take home message for today is move more and sit less. How do we decrease the monitor time? How do we decrease the screen time?
how do we, in other words, decrease the sedentary time? How do we take breaks in between for our prolonged sedentary time? And also, how do we decrease our exposure to prolonged habitual sedentary time and also acute exposure to sedentary times like this? And also, prolonged sedentary time has proven to be like second smoking. So, keep moving until I see you next time. Stay active. I hope that helps.